Hey, Joanne, thanks for being there. I'm glad we could spend some time today.
Definitely excited to be here.
Joanne, we are seeing blockchain and digital assets really catch a new level of maturity. I think we're seeing it across all different industry segments. And we're watching not just startups, but we're watching mature state enterprise engage with decentralized protocols. We're watching them engage with digital assets. Where are you seeing the interest today?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest in gaming across the board. The value that NFTs and blockchain can bring is that it helps our clients bring a higher level experience, right, to those users within their ecosystems. Before blockchain, people were locked inside the ecosystem of those individual gaming, whether it was social mobile gaming or real money gaming. So we're seeing clients both intrigued and interested in how can we bring something more cross-platform to those users so that they can really feel the impact and meaningful nature of those hours they put into the games, that they could bring it across to other ways to monetize that involvement, or just engage with each other in an ecosystem that brings that thrill of those games way beyond the initial platforms that were developed.
Let's drill down on that for just a minute. Platforms that are housed within an enterprise, and an experience housed within an enterprise, and assets or virtual goods, virtual realities housed within an enterprise. What's changed today is I think that those assets become real, they become portable, they become transferable outside of a controlled instance using distributed ledger technology, right? And then you and I ask ourselves the age-old question, what's the thing? And what does that mean from a tax perspective, what it means from a broader regulatory perspective?
If the token is going to come out of that, that client's ecosystem, right, and be moving across, what rights is it going to afford the holder? What's the nature of this thing, this new way you want to have your users experience? And whether that's, traditional gaming or online gaming or other ways for people to find a way to do this, that's where we have to spend a key portion of our analysis.
Because in the old world, where you had virtual goods, again, controlled enterprise, you would say, okay, that's, somebody pays, $1 for a virtual good, that's deferred revenue on behalf of the platform, right? But now, don't we have to question, does it become a thing? Does it rise to the level of property?
If you look at the way tax technical code is written, even a simple question, is this a capital asset or is this a ordinary or piece of business property? That can be tough to answer. The most basic question, because you need to go through and look at code that was written before there was ever a digital good such as this and say, here's what's changed here. I have something digital. It can move around freely. My users may experience it in different ways. They may obtain it in different ways. So you have to go through, am I holding this out for the course of sale? Is it a sale of a piece of property? You have to go through all those different portions of the code. And then you might say, okay, maybe I've landed that it's not a capital asset. Maybe I've landed on it being a piece of business property, but we're not done there, right? Because the way that this is written, every single jurisdiction, whether that's your local state jurisdiction, whether these are sales to foreign individuals that could be subject to VAT, whether you just have the information reporting that's required both globally and in the US, we are constantly having this dialogue.
Let's stay within the tech sector just for a minute, and let's talk about something that I find interesting, and that is this digital rights management concept and using smart contracts. And so, let's maybe bring into place some of these examples where platforms and somebody accessing the platform. It could be a video, it could be a song, it could be a software application. We could talk about SaaS and subscription, and Let's talk about what happens when you take that legal contract and you program the rights to the different parties and you link those to certain oracles in various systems, and the rights to the users are now using programmable money, interacting with smart contracts, redeploying those funds on a real-time basis with full visibility who has rights to those intangibles and all of the efficiencies gained there. Are we there yet? Is that too advanced?
We're certainly seeing massive amounts of investment. I think our clients are only limited between the amount of investment and finding a sufficient number of programmers and technologists and ideation around really making smart contracts as robust as possible. We are seeing that funding funneling into our clients so that they can make smart contracts use cases happen and execute in a way that really will transform many of the things you were saying, Rob, right? This can transform how we do business, how we make the rights to music or other types of intellectual property transfer and payments between each other.
We've grown up with these methodologies and funds flow using fiat currency, real money, and traditional platforms. But when you change it all up, new forms of property, new transaction flows, you just have to almost examine everything with a fresh lens and ask yourself, do we get to the same tax answer from a revenue recognition standpoint, from a sourcing standpoint? What about apportionment?
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes what might be the simplest is who owns the NFT? Where did they get it, right? Even that can be a hard question because you have to examine at what data source did I have, maybe in the KYC process. Do I have a billing address? Do I have a home address? Do I have an IP address? People can move. So even something simple as saying, who bought this or who did I give it to or who did I provide it to? You have to think about your technology and the data that's gathered very early on when these are passed out to people, whether it's via airdrops, compensatory, or simply as part of people purchasing them, right? And I think to get to the right answers in this space, it really requires a great collaboration in the ecosystem between the service providers, especially since we're in somewhat uncharted territory where we're working by analogy because the rules were written many years ago before there were blockchain and digital assets. So we have to come together to analogize and get to conclusions. So I think that complexity really speaks to why we all work together.
I don't know that the U.S. regulators have caught up yet. I know they're talking about it, but for sure, throughout the world, tons of uncertainty here. How's that feel?
When you take something that was written, 50 years ago and try to say, how does this apply to this type of asset that is held and represented digitally by code on a blockchain, you really have to challenge yourself and challenge those around you to draw analogies that make sense, that are coherent, and could stand up to those future conversations. There needs to be crisp, clear correlation between why you said something written about tangible goods might apply to digital goods. Here are the things that you need to maintain in your books and records as a client and a taxpayer to make sure that robust documentation is retrievable and housed in the right places. I do think this is an area where pictures are very powerful because we are flowing a digital or what feels like an invisible good through a system. And now you can actually put something on a piece of paper and show your stakeholders where those points of relevant taxation or income statement impact are. And I think we find that sometimes by putting something in a picture, when you take that to, legal, or you take that to your technologist, they might say, oh, that's not what we thought was happening. and it gives you an opportunity to open up the dialogue.
Let's talk about supply chain scenarios. So we now have, grown up for generations watching a flow of goods travel through a, traditional supply chain flow. What's happening now as we re-envision using blockchain technology? We know that if it's all within one enterprise, you don't need a blockchain for that database, right? But if now we've re-examined the transaction flow crossing different unrelated parties, we've looked at a supply chain scenario, recontracting using smart contracts. using a maybe a permissioned instance so that not everybody can see what's going on. But you have brought transparency to all the stakeholders in a full-on supply chain scenario. Maybe you've unlocked payment methodologies when somebody has fulfilled their obligations. Are we seeing this play out? Are we too advanced? Are we working through this today?
The number one word that comes to mind based on everything you said, Rob, is building trust. Knowing the origins of where everything came through a supply chain, being able to trace that back, having it immutable, right, on a ledger where anyone can go back and see all the points of transfer of ownership of the goods, of whatever it is in that system. That's very meaningful to building trust with consumers. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the investment in this space.
Totally agree with you. I think the transparency to the consumer is absolutely relevant. That's a lot of what's driving here. I also think there's a motivation for just the different stakeholders in the supply chain to say, I now have visibility to what's actually going on. So Joanne, one thing we've not spoken about is the infrastructure it takes to allow decentralized protocols to work. There's a lot of dialogue out there around energy consumption and is this the right way to use energy? I'm watching the utility sector really engage. You have, utilities that they don't have much to do with technology, but they're recognizing that they may have a role in otherwise wasted energy in enabling infrastructure here and then putting those assets to work for the benefit of the ratepayers.
This is a time to pivot and look to how maybe a utility company that previously was not involved in blockchain or digital assets, providing proof of work or proof of stake, will now have to take this under their wing in order to help decentralized protocols become successful.
Joanne, love this conversation. I mean, you and I have been working together a long time on this topic, and I'm so proud of the way that the industry's matured. It's reached a level of maturity when our days are filled with, Fortune 50 companies asking about crypto transactions, right? And everything in between. So really enjoyable to be working with you on this topic and very much appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much. I feel very much the same, and it's really a privilege to get to work in a field and space that's so dynamic, that really does challenge us every single day, but also affords a lot of teaming with so many different stakeholders in these ecosystems.